you had followed me at all. GERCON was nice enough to give me a free ticket when we thought we were going to need an extra, and didn't need it, so I said, solve this, and you can win a ticket. The reason I knew how to do this when I was in middle school is that I had two parents who were both teachers, and they would love to come home and tell us about how they caught some kids passing notes in class and read them to the entire class. This was supposed to deter me from passing notes. It inspired me to pass notes that were coded. So this is something that we did forever. Point being, we spend so much time trying to make sure no one gets our data, we forget how to actually communicate with each other, or even worse, the people we're trying to convince that our ideas for security are the best ways to go. Welcome to Decrypting Communication. So, my beginning is, I'm Katie, Catherine, Kay Lauren, and Nerd Chick if you follow Twitter. If you want to contact me, the best one's actually catherine.e.cook. The worst one is the KF at FBC Tech. That's where I work. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, my husband's right there. I work again as a service coordinator at FBC Technology, which means I get to boss around a lot of techs. And I'm also a nerd, a geek, a dork, whatever else you want to call it. I watch Star Trek, I play video games, and I come to conferences and think it's a fun vacation. So that tells you about me. About 7 years ago, I found myself suddenly very single, very unemployed, and very financially responsible for 3 children. So I could not find a job. As you know, the recession kind of hit. A woman who'd been home with her kids for a decade, not really marketable. So I taught myself how to earn some money by learning to write very quickly, follow the rules, make some money, and not starve. It did take a little time, but within about a week or so, I started earning money by doing these things. I contributed to lifestyle magazine articles, which are boring. I wrote merchandise reviews, which are even more boring. I did have an article in 2600, about my only really proud accomplishment in this writing time. And I did contribute to some parental safety articles for security for kids. And I also have been creating courses for adults on basic computer skills because I'm really tired of showing them where their C drive is. What inspired this topic that has absolutely nothing to do with actual security? I went back to school, and even though I hadn't been doing much writing, I'd been doing a lot of reading, and I didn't want to read other people's stuff. It was horribly written. They didn't know how to use spell check, they didn't know what a period was used for, and a sentence, paragraph, or any other definition of an ending or beginning of a thought, people just didn't know what it was. It drove me insane. When I got into a job at FBC, I found myself reading other people's documentation all the time, and mostly what I spent time doing was correcting it, because it had to go out to clients, and they needed to be able to understand what the heck happened to their computer. Using 5,000 acronyms to say we turned it off and on again didn't really help the average customer. So that's another reason. Last year is the first year I went to a convention, and I was not the only one who'd been noticing this slightly lowered expectation of good communication throughout the community. So I thought, hey, I'd like a free ticket next year. I think I'll put together a talk and see if someone will take it and I can get somewhere free. Why does it matter if we can talk, communicate at all? You can write in all these languages. Why do you need to write in English? If you work with computers and not people, why do you need to talk to them? You know, the guy in the dark room who's been working on the same server for the last 4 days and hasn't seen a human being, he may eventually need to explain to someone what he's been doing for 4 days with that server. So it's handy to be able to, again, say it in English. Why? Yeah, people don't know. Their fault they don't know what I'm talking about. I can't even tell you how many people actually think this. Documentation doesn't require proper grammar. The people who work with me know what I'm saying, and it's not a requirement for my position. I'm here to learn security, not composition. The reason you have to learn it is that eventually you are going to speak with customers. They're going to need to know what you're saying, what you're explaining, and why it's important to them. If you're submitting summary reports to your manager, your CEO, CFO, CSO, you're going to want to be able to explain to him, and he's going to want to be able to understand what it is that you're trying to impart. Documentation going to management, again, same thing. Client questions in need of understandable explanations. We use so much technobabble that a lot of times the customers forget what we're trying to say. Written requests, written pay time off for InfoSec cons, the most important reason to become an effective communicator, in my opinion. In other words, writing well can bring you closer to your goals. Become an effective communicator has the potential of making you a unique find in the technology community. And improving your communication skills will make you a more valuable employee. And for students, and I say this again from going back to college and having to read things, the world may ask you for a hashtag, but your professor never will. So that's the why. The written word here, you can't fix it if you don't know it's broken. You can't tell if you need to improve issues that you have with writing if you don't know that you have those issues. And here's some ways I can show you how to correct a weakness. This is rather bad. I was preparing to get my A+ cert, and I've been literally working on computers since I was about 11. Whenever we got a computer in the house, the first thing that was said was, "Here, Kate." So I'm sure you all understand how that feels. I really expected to fly through that course, fly through the test, no problem. I was kind of mistaken. I did not pass. So I didn't know that I didn't know certain things. I didn't find out until I tested it. So I didn't find out until someone else took a look at what I could do to tell me what I couldn't do. So to calculate your writing weaknesses, you need to be able to find someone who's willing to read your work, and you have to be willing to take the criticism that comes honestly. If they say that your writing is horrible, you might want somebody who can give you an actual example of why it's horrible. It's horrible because, not, "Oh, this sucks, here you go." Evaluating your own writing is something we all learn to do in school. If you ever had to write any paper ever about anything, at some point you had to learn to proofread, use a processor with spell check on. You should also check your word processor for sensitivity for grammar, punctuation, because you can miss some serious things that make a huge difference in what you're trying to say. You should always turn on your extras like word count, because if you're getting too wordy, they're going to stop reading at about word 300. Understand that even if you're doing all of these, it's just the first step. And I also say that if you happen to be submitting papers over the over the pond or in Australia, change your word processor to recognize or write in that format. It actually will come off a little bit better for them. If you do all that, the reason it isn't quite enough is because that screen didn't come out right. There are two truths of your own writing. You know what you wanted to say, so when you read it, that's what you read. If you wanted to say, "I'm walking through the hill," but you said, "I'm walking the hill," you're going to read that so quick, you're not even going to see that mistake. And the mistakes that you're making a lot of times aren't going to be ones that you're even aware are mistakes. Commas in the wrong places, capitalizing something that doesn't need capitalizing, forgetting to capitalize something. And it's a minor thing, but those little distractions can make the person reading your article completely miss your point. Examples of some common mistakes. It's time to go. The poor thing died. There was too much waste this quarter. We hired too many fat people this quarter. The cloud is over their head. Mr. Howe, the cloud is over there. So, I mean, commas, punctuation, little things, they're not exact translations, but you can see how something could be misunderstood. Most people in this room, I would think, would get it right. But when it's written down, again, it's a distraction. It could be a problem. If you have someone read these, they'll catch these. There are no spelling mistakes. There's no actual grammar mistakes, but you can miss something simply because it's not underlined by your word processor. Another example. I agree with the last one. But you can see that the difference of a colon and a comma changes the meaning of that sentence. A woman without her man is nothing. A woman without her man is nothing. Serial commas. And yes, I'm a Trekkie. If you watched First Contact, you know that Zephyr and Cochrane had a little hand getting the Phoenix ready and going on time. In Picard's view, he would say that Geordi and William helped to get it going. For Cochrane, he's saying his crew, as well as Geordi and Riker, got it going. So that comma makes a difference as to what that sentence even means. Double checking and looking can make a huge difference as to what you're trying to tell whoever it is you're trying to tell something to. This is another one I really like. My parents are teachers. You're the best teacher ever. I'm going to guess they probably aren't the best teacher ever. And although that's a bad spelling for your brain, I just thought that was too funny to miss. You need to know the difference between your homonyms, people. If you don't put the right one in the right place, what you're going to end up with is a letter back explaining to you exactly what the word your means and when it should be used. This will cover all bases, but it's not exactly the best way to go. I also watch Voyager. Then and then. So, once Voyager was abducted, Captain Janeway decided that the Prime Directive and the preservation of the Ocampa was more important than, comparative, using the array to get home immediately. Then, so the captain and the crew destroyed the array, then set a course back to the Alpha Quadrant. So the difference between then and than sounds no different when you say it, but obviously when you write it, it is a huge difference. Effect and effect. Firefly fans? The Alliance hoped to effect a change in its citizens by lowering the aggression through the introduction of an experimental chemical to the colony on Miranda. And then I hit the right one there. The effect of the chemical. So you can see that it's a minor difference, but the difference in the word, the meaning of it, is completely different. And again, if you get a grammar Nazi, they will stop and they will be not impressed with you. This one is actually no longer relevant, but somebody took a lot of time to draw the Enterprise on there, so I just wanted to show it off. It's pretty neat. You can pretty much split your infinitives now. We can boldly go wherever the hell we want. We don't have to go boldly. But I just wanted to show that one off a little bit. Spell check is always your friend. If you do not want to look like a complete moron, you may want to spell check and make sure that your knowledge is correct. And you may want to skip words that, yes, are technically in the dictionary. Quite frankly, they make me cringe when I hear them in conversation, and if I ever see them on a paper, I take quite a bit of time enjoying belittling my technicians and telling them this is not correct. So even if the word is in the dictionary, if you don't see it as a professional word, don't use it. And yes, seriously is actually a word that just blew my mind. It's now part of the dictionary and for Webster. So even though you know the rules, how can you guarantee that you're not going to make the mistakes? You can't. I write all the time. I make huge mistakes all the time. Check my blog. It's fun. In the end, you don't do it alone. If you want to be able to present something well, be ready to lean on other people. We lean on each other for all kinds of things. A little spell check and grammar help isn't going to be a big burden on anybody. And if you really want some help, I'm always happy to read stuff. Doesn't mean that you just use the word processor or people, but be ready to pass it around and take the criticism. What you get from this is you slowly learn to identify your communication issues. whether it's spelling, grammar, punctuation, anything listed, you'll catch yourself making those mistakes before you actually type them or write them down. And when you can do that, you get those papers and any reports out faster because you're taking less time double checking your work and more time being productive. The best ways I have found to improve skills is to simply practice and read. If you read stuff that's well written and you only read things that have been proofed and checked, those habits are going to be caught in your head eventually just from repetitive seeing it repetitively. Eventually, you'll actually start doing it naturally when you write yourself. And really, the best thing you can do is practice. Practice writing. Blog. Don't just write updates and Twitter, but occasionally, even if it's only once a week, do something that has actual value. Maybe ideas that you may have for your next con. I'm not a real fan of public presentation, but it is necessary. Live speech is, in a lot of ways, comparable to writing. It's preparation, knowing what you're going to do, say, put down. The difference is it's real time, and you have to get past the idea of getting in front of people and talking to them. You should anticipate your audience type so that your presentation is geared towards them. You don't want to say the wrong thing, mention the wrong company, or some sort of affiliation that might end up getting you out of the room faster than you wanted to. Case in point, I thought I might be talking to a lot of males who may be geeks. Possibly like me, they watch sci-fi. So I thought they might appreciate that for a minute. Just in case everyone isn't always the same, I thought I'd make this give me a little something too. So you should try and gear it for whoever might be in your audience. You can't rely on cheap tricks. You do have to have some actual content, things people are going to want to know. Try to anticipate what people might ask. Questions and answers come easier that way if you have at least some idea of what might come up from the presentation. Visual aids are always good. We aren't really at trans warp factor, big and Trekkie. I just wouldn't put it in there. You can feel free to measure your dweeb, nerdness, dork, geek, or obsession, intelligence, or social ineptitude on your own time. Although you don't want to put on too much, eventually people will get up and leave just because you are droning on and on and on and on. I think 320 slides is actually the perfect number. And if it was Mr. Spock, I would sit down quietly and listen. The best thing you can do is practice. Go over it in front of a mirror, go over it and over it until it comes out fairly smoothly, until you have an idea of what words you're going to be using. And that way it'll be smoother for you, it'll be easier on the audience, and everybody will be more engaged and be ready to listen to what you have to say. Tricks for practicing we've all learned. I can't remember not knowing this, but my dad, along with being a teacher, was also the speech coach. So practicing for a speech was sort of a second-hand thing. You should try and time yourself. Check and find out how long you're going, how fast you're going. People who are speaking in public tend to go a little bit faster than they do when they're doing it on their own. You can also, again, practice in the mirror, record yourself on camera, play it back. That way, if you make similar mistakes, the same mistakes over and over again with the writing, if you do it enough and you see what you're doing, you'll be able to stop yourself. Watch the uhs. I can't not Hopefully I'm engaging enough that you're listening, but it's something to try to avoid. Remember, you are the one up there talking. You should not be leaning on the podium, standing stock still, staring at your notes, talking too fast, or speak too quietly so that no one can actually hear what you're trying to say. Always make eye contact, move around a little, speak to the audience, smile and communicate with your expressions as well as your words. Speak slowly and clearly. I have a bit, so if you can't understand me, I'm sorry. I try very hard. And watch for the audience. Watch for cues that they're either understanding, following. Maybe you get some very confused looks. That's a time to stop, back up a second, maybe re-explain yourself. How do you judge your skills when you're done communicating? Well, do they understand? Do they follow what you're saying? Are they able to come up with their own questions about what you've been saying? It means they've at least understood some of it. And more importantly, if you're presenting to your boss, does he now want to pay for your convention trip or possibly pay your time while you're there? And most importantly, are they awake when you're done? Thank you very much. Enjoy your convention.